Yeah, welcome into the Tuesday edition of Robbie and Rex Road, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Adam Vingan, Nick Keyser here with you on this Tuesday morning. Rex Road out on vacation. He's also officiating a wedding this weekend, which somebody needs to record. We got to find video of this when it happens. But Rex Road is out the rest of the week. Adam Vingan will be with us the rest of the week here on the program. Adam, how we doing? What's going on?
I'm good. Good to be back.
Good to have you back.
Glad to see you're feeling better.
Yes.
Had to call out yesterday.
Back in here today. So no full crew yesterday, no full crew today, but we somehow have survived both times out. Nick, how we doing? What's going on?
I'm well. Robbie, how was your trip to Chattanooga as well?
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, it was good. We had a good time.
Did you see all the fish?
We saw a lot of fish at the aquarium.
I'm headed to Chattanooga next month
Are you?
for a couple of days.
Nice.
So feel free to give me your recommendations.
I can do that.
The Chattanooga Choo Choo, the Moon Pie, minor league baseball.
Thank you, Nick.
There you go.
Nick is a Chattanooga expert, apparently.
Apparently.
Apparently so.
Several trips
Yeah.
from my early days in college.
There you go.
You can also tell me about the whichever British Columbia airport you were
Yeah.
at. I've heard that a couple times.
Victoria
There you go.
There you go.
and
If I-
Vancouver.
If I ever stop at the Victoria
Airport.
Nick,
Nick,
I'll give you a ring.
Where do I go? We got a lot to get into on the program today. Caroline Fenton will be with us at 7 o'clock. Alex Doherty from the Tennessean will join us at 8 o'clock. And Alex is on vacation, but is joining us anyway. I gave him like 3 chances to opt out. He said, no, I'm doing it. We'll do it.
Where is he vacationing?
I don't
Do
know.
we know?
He's at the beach somewhere. So we're going to find out.
Is Koharski on vacation too?
Kuharski's also on vacation.
Jeez.
A lot of vacation going on right now.
I mean, this is the prime time to do it, right?
It is.
Titans are about to wrap up until training camp.
Yeah.
So you have, 5 weeks, 6 weeks
Yep.
until training camp? Yeah, this is prime vacation season, hence why I'm here.
It is.
It's prime vacation season on 102.5 The Game.
It is. The Florida Panthers take a 2-0 series lead in the Stanley Cup final last night. They win 4-1 against the Edmonton Oilers. So both games 1 and 2 at home for Florida, they win both of them. The series will shift to Edmonton for game 3 coming up here in a few days. It was an interesting first 2 games of the series because Edmonton, I thought, was the better team in game 1, and Bobrovsky played awesome in net. And then last night, it was a penalty fest, so it was hard to really establish a flow in the game. But Florida, I thought, was clearly the better team last night, and they got rewarded for it on the scoreboard. So the Panthers only 2 wins away from their first Stanley Cup championship in franchise history. And now Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, and the Oilers are going to have to win 4 out of the next 5. Going back home to Edmonton for game 3. What have you made of this series, this matchup to this point?
It's been a fascinating series, and I would agree that game 1, everything that typically indicates whether a team wins or loses was going toward the Edmonton Oilers, except for the fact that Sergei Bobrovsky was excellent. They certainly got goalied in that game. Last night, it was the script was flipped. The Panthers, I believe, had a 22-7 shot advantage through 2 periods. And although the Oilers took a lead early in the game, Matthias Ekholm with a McDavid-esque goal.
It was. Looked off
4
Leon
on 4.
Draisaitl. Said, Leon, you stay over there. I got this.
End-to-end rush for Matthias Ekholm and beat Sergei Bobrovsky 5-hole. First 5-hole goal that Bobrovsky has allowed all postseason. So that was good to see. But then the Panthers took over, and you could tell that frustration was boiling over for the Oilers. Leon Draisaitl hits I was about to say Bobrovsky. Draisaitl hits Alexander Barkov up high. He leaves the game, and Barkov's status is uncertain. It's good for the Panthers that there are 2 days off now. They do not play until Thursday because there is a travel day. I'm sure you've heard this if you've been watching the Stanley Cup final. The distance between the 2 cities involved is the greatest in Stanley Cup final history.
I believe it's 2,541 miles.
That is correct. 2,541 miles separate Sunrise, Florida from Edmonton, Alberta. So they need that extra day
a
to
long
travel. It is a long trek, but it's good. I think for it's good for that reason. So Barkov has an extra day to heal. But look, the Panthers are firmly in control. I looked this up before the show. Teams that take a 2-0 lead in the Stanley Cup Final since it went to best of 7 have won 49 of 54. So nearly 91%.
It's pretty good.
So the odds are very much in favor of Florida as the Stanley Cup Final continues. But I had high hopes for this series. I thought it was going to be highly entertaining, and it really hasn't disappointed over the first 2 games.
No, it's been a lot of fun to watch. Now we'll see. The games themselves have been fun to watch. At some point, to have a good series, you need some actual competitive results. So, Florida marches up there and it's 2 really good games in Edmonton, but they sweep the series, and it's like, okay, that was kind of a dud.
Yeah, 1 goal for the Oilers, and it was, as I said, it was a 4-on-4. So 0 5-on-5 goals, 0 power play
That's
goals.
That's the big thing. Like they've had
the Oilers in the
They've
series.
had a good. I haven't looked it up to see how many they've had, but I can tell you just from watching games 1 and 2, they've had a good amount of opportunities. On the power play, and that power play. We know if you're a Predators fan, you've seen how dangerous that thing is. I think in the playoffs they were like 32% heading into the series with how they were clicking, and to have not scored a power play goal through the first 2 games might be the most shocking thing out there because of how dangerous that power play is for Edmonton.
And their penalty kill had been great. I believe they had killed off 34 consecutive penalties until Evan Rodriguez scored in the 3rd period last night. And so they entered the postseason. They might still have the top power play and top penalty kill in the postseason. But yeah, the fact that the power play hasn't scored is certainly a cause for concern. They have had plenty of opportunities, and either they've just missed or Bobrovsky's made an excellent save. But I expect Edmonton to take at least one of the 2 at home. I can't imagine a team with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl get swept.
Yeah, that'd be surprising.
It would not shock me if we see similar to what we saw when the Predators were in the Stanley Cup Final in 2017. The Penguins won the first 2 games of that series. The Predators came home, won the next 2. So it would not shock me if the Oilers find a way to tie this series with their 2 home games. But I want a long series. I mean, this also goes toward the NBA Finals as well, which is also 2-0.
Yep.
And Game 3 is tomorrow in Dallas. Once this ends, once the Stanley Cup Final and NBA Finals end, then we're in like the worst part of the sports calendar for me. The good news is that we have the Olympics this summer, so it won't be that bad. But that period of time where, all due respect to all of you out there who love baseball, when baseball's the only thing going on, it can be a little painful.
It's a little rough. There's no doubt about that.
So I need the Mavericks and the Oilers to get their acts together so we can keep these finals going on a little bit longer.
On the Panthers front, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago when it's not a great correlation because the Panthers have some players and some pieces in place that the Predators just don't have right now. But it is interesting. I mean, they made 2 gigantic moves. Number 1 being the trade for Matthew Tkachuk. They bring him in from Calgary. And then they moved on from Andrew Burnett and brought in Paul Maurice. And you're not going to find a bigger Paul Maurice fan than me. I love that guy. And it's obviously worked out really well for them. But those 2 moves and how they've kind of set themselves up with guys that were on the roster already that are really, really good players. Like Barkov is a great player. Forsling has turned into a really good defenseman. You've got Verhaeghe there. I mean, there's all kinds of guys that they have. So they've been an ascending team now for a while, but it is kind of amazing. It feels like that Matthew Tkachuk move was really what put them over the top, and now they've gone to the final in his first year, and they're 2 wins away from winning it his second year.
If I recall correctly, and this might piss off Predators fans, but if I recall correctly, in 2013, ahead of that draft, a lot of the mock drafts had Alexander Barkov going to the Predators at 4.
That is correct.
I feel like that. I feel like I remember that, or at least looking it up at some point in the not too distant past.
There was by the time draft day came around, I think that there was a lot more momentum that it might be Seth Jones that slid. But for the most part, leading up in that draft, I can tell you, Barkov.
Yeah, you were
was
here for that. I
Yeah,
wasn't.
Barkov was the guy that everybody expected to be.
Now, just imagine if Alexander Barkov was the same player he's been for the Panthers, but only for the Predators.
pretty wild.
We wouldn't have to worry about the hunt for the elusive top line center.
Nope.
Because they would have him. But back to Tkachuk, his arrival in Florida 2 summers ago, changed the trajectory of that franchise. Now, as you mentioned, don't forget the impact Paul Maurice had on that too. He also arrived that summer, in the summer of 2022. Maurice changed the way the Panthers play.
Yeah.
Under Brunette, we've talked about this when the Predators hired Brunette last year. They were, a run and gun team. Dynamic off the rush. I believe they were the highest scoring team. Brunette's Panthers team was the highest scoring team in terms of goals per game in the salary cap era
That is
of
correct.
any team
Over
since,
4 games.
Since 2005. So Maurice comes in, Tkachuk comes in. They change the way they play. They can still attack off the rush. They still have a lot of dynamic players, but it's more about pounding opponents below the goal line, pouncing on turnovers, that in-your-face approach, which Tkachuk embodies, as well as Sam Bennett and a lot of other guys on the team. So, I feel like, the Panthers have, last season, the Panthers, they struggled during the regular season. It didn't click right away. They were the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference, and they made it to the Stanley Cup final. But it didn't feel like a Cinderella story because they were supposed to be a good team. They just didn't figure it out immediately.
Right.
This year, they figured it out, right, from the get-go. They didn't really need to figure it out because they had figured it out last year. And they were a great team during the regular season. They've been great in the postseason. The most amazing thing, their goal differential in the third period in the playoffs, 28-11.
It's pretty
They've
wild.
outscored opponents in the third period. So even when the game is tied or they're down entering the third period, it's almost like they have their opponent right where they want them. And I still think Edmonton gets at least one of the next 2. Like I said, it wouldn't shock me if they won both, but something tells me that the Panthers are well on their way. As I said, 91% of Stanley Cup finalists who go up 2-0 win. So maybe it's not. I'm not going out on a limb here when I say that, but they've acquitted themselves quite well over 2 games.
615-737-1025 is our phone number. We're off and running today here on Robbie and Rexroad. We'll get into some Predators offseason discussion coming up with Adam Vingan next. Take your thoughts as well on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Robbie and Rexroad, 1025-1063, The Game. Welcome back in, Robbie and Rex Road, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. We are broadcasting live from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. This Thursday, the Robbie and Rex Road program, that's this program, will be broadcasting live from the grand opening of a new Dunkin' location in Nashville at 326 Harding Place. 102.5 The Game will be on site from 6 to 9 a.m. Stop by and have your chance to win lots of great prizes as well. Myself and the beautiful shining face of Adam Vingan will be there on Thursday. So looking forward to that.
Two adjectives that have never been described. They've never been used to describe my face. That's a first. But yes, we'll see you at Dunkin' at 6 a.m.
That's right. We'll
come
be
get
there.
your donuts. What's beautiful and shining? A brand new Dunkin' Donuts.
Oh, man, you're good.
There you go.
Man, you're good. Talking Preds offseason with Adam Vingan, taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. So the Stanley Cup Final, Florida 2 games away from wrapping this thing up. We'll see if Edmonton can make a series of it as they go back home in Games 3 and in Games 4. But whenever it's done, whether it's Edmonton coming back and winning the series or Florida finishing the job off, the offseason is going to be here pretty rapidly. After that, you got the NHL draft coming up, and then we get right into free agency and trade season and all that stuff. So as you look at it, which, by the way, RIP Cap Friendly.
Yes, that's very sad.
Now about to be gone because the Washington Capitals apparently purchased it.
Very strange transaction.
Yeah,
if you missed it over the weekend, it was reported by Elliot Freeman on Sportsnet that the Capitals have purchased Cap Friendly,
which is a website
which is incredibly invaluable to hockey fans, hockey reporters, people in hockey.
Yeah.
And which is why the Capitals probably swooped in and scooped it up. There you go. It's apparently going to stay operational until after the draft and free agency. Yeah. But once the sale is finalized, it's going to go dark. Now, there are alternatives. Puckpedia comes to mind, and I'm sure another site like Cap Friendly will rise from the ashes, so to speak, just like Cap Friendly did about 10 years ago.
Yep.
There was a site called Cap Geek.
I remember that one.
Which was incredibly popular, and when that website closed down, Cap Friendly filled its place. So I'm sure there'll be another site that does the same for Cap Friendly. But yes, very sad. So we will be sure to use Cap Friendly as much as humanly possible over the next month.
Well, according to Cap Friendly, the Predators right now have just over $26 million in cap space. Obviously, the Ryan McDonagh trade back to Tampa Bay opened up some more money that way. You do have the Matt Duchene contract still on the books next year. You have Ryan Johansson's part of the buyout, or excuse me, the trade and the retained salary on the books for next year as well. So you're talking $4 million in cap space for Johansson, $5.5 million for Matt Duchene next year, if you want to count it and yell about it. Matthias Ekholm has $250,000 next year. Oh, by the way, you're still paying Kyle Turris for the next 4 years at $2 million per year on the cap. So you've got some money that you're spending for guys that are no longer here. But you still have $26 million in cap space available to you. So the Predators have plenty of room to operate with this offseason if Barry Trotz wants to be aggressive, wants to add to the roster that way. We've talked about, the Marner stuff. I'm becoming less and less convinced that the Marner situation is going to be resolved this offseason. We'll see what that looks like as it goes forward here. But as you look at where the Predators are based on the salary cap going up a little bit, and it's going to hopefully continue to go up over the next few years here, how do you view the position that Barry Trotz finds himself in, given what we saw from this team last year, but also the age of some of these guys? I brought this up before too. Like and you're around kind of like in the middle of this, right? 2015, you could see it. They got beat by Chicago, but there was a young core. 2016, they added to it. They went and made the Johansson-Seth Jones trade, and you could see it. Like they were ascending, and they moved Shea Weber out, brought PK Subban in, and that's when 2017 everything kind of culminated there. Like this to me is not that. Like they still are a pretty – I'm not going to say they're an old team, but they've got some guys that are a pretty veteran-laden roster right now, waiting on some younger guys to kind of come in and take that next step. So how do you view this offseason and the charge that is now in front of Barry Trotz to address this team?
Well, while you're talking about the collective age of the roster, according to the NHL, the roster as it was frozen when the season ended, the Predators' average age was 29.3, which is, in terms of youngest to oldest, 27th in the NHL. So that puts what, like 5 or 6 teams that have an older roster. Yeah. So the idea that the Predators are a young team, which you've talked about quite a bit, is a fallacy. They have younger players, sure, but they are not a young team. To your point, like they were in 2015 when you had, Roman Josi, Philip Forsberg, Matthias Ekholm, Ryan Ellis, all coming of age, and that's not the case anymore. They're in a great position cap-wise, because they don't have any major decisions. Oh, well, sorry, other than UC Saros. They do not have any major contract decisions.
And even he's got 1 year left.
Right.
Like, if you really wanted to, you could let it go. But.
Right, you could. But so this year, you're looking at the players that, that need new contracts, who are UFA specifically. Anthony Beauvillier, Kiefer Sherwood, Jason Zucker, Tyson Barrie, Alex Carrier, and Kevin Lankinen.
Yeah.
That's it. So you don't have very many tough decisions to make there. Now, you could quibble with that when it comes to Carrier, whether you want to re-sign him or not, but I don't think that contract's going to cost a lot of money. So you don't have any major decisions to make this summer in terms of moves that will affect the cap next season.
Right.
Saros is a major decision, but that doesn't take effect until the season after this coming season.
Right.
So they're in a great position there. We've talked about all of the draft capital they have. 3 second round picks this summer, 2 next summer. So 5 in the next 2 years. They have an extra first round pick next year from the Tampa Bay Lightning. I thought the move for McDonough was a really great piece of asset management because they basically got him for free, and then they got a premium asset in exchange for giving him back to Tampa Bay a few weeks ago. So Barry Trotz is in a really advantageous position. So, really, whether he wants to go big game hunting, sign a big free agent, make a big trade, all of the options are there. They are not limited by money at all this offseason. And it'll be interesting to see what they decide to do because, I guess this is the question that I would pose to you, Robbie. It seems like, based on the reporting from, numerous outlets, it seems like the likelihood of UC Saros re-signing is pretty high.
Yes.
Now, things could change, obviously, but it seems like we are headed towards a new UC Saros contract at some point.
I would agree.
If Saros was your best asset, this is the player or draft pick on our team that we have that could get us a premium asset back, we mentioned Mitch Marner. I don't think that's going to happen either. But if Saros is re-signing, what is the Predators' most valuable asset? What could they now use to go get something that changes the makeup of their team?
Well, I think my answer to that would probably be, in terms of realistic, because somebody would say, well, it's Philip Forsberg or it's Roman Josi. Well, those guys have no movement clauses.
Be realistic.
Those guys have no movement clauses, and they're not going anywhere. My answer to that would probably be the collection of draft picks that they have.
Okay.
It would probably be the fact that they've got a ton of first and second and third round picks over the next couple of years. Somebody might say Kimmel, maybe. Kimmel, I think, had a good year. I don't think he had a great year in Milwaukee. I think he had a good year.
You wouldn't throw Askarov into that mix?
Askarov, for sure.
That would have been my answer.
I think he's for sure. I think he's definitely in the mix. I mean, the question I always have with that, though, is, and it goes back to the genesis of this whole discussion, how much do teams out there actually value young, unproven goalies? I don't know.
The problem would have been solved last summer if one of those teams at the top of the draft would have taken Askarov to move down in the draft. We wouldn't be having all of these conversations.
Exactly.
Actually, it's probably good for us because think about how much airtime we filled talking about Saros and Askarov and such. But I made this point with Willie a couple of weeks ago when I came in to the midday show and sat with Caroline and Willie. Askarov to me kind of fills the spot. Well, let me rephrase that. Askarov currently reminds me of Eeli Tolvanen right when he arrived in the NHL. There was so much hype around Eeli Tolvanen. And I remember, I believe it was 2017, That's when he came at the end of the season, right?
2018.
2018.
Yep.
2017, 18.
Yep.
I'm sorry. There were reports around the trade deadline that the Predators might be willing to move Eeli Tolvanen in the right deal for a win now type of move. In hindsight, maybe they should have done that because there was so much hype around Tolvanen that you probably could have gotten more than you would think because of the potential of Tolvanen.
Yep.
And I'm wondering if Askarov fits that same mold. Now, he's played a lot more games in the American League, but he's still young. So I'm wondering if now would be if you're going to sign Saros, you have to move Askarov, in my opinion, fairly quickly after that. Maybe there's a team that's so enticed by the potential of Askarov that they'll give you a premium for him. Sort of like what might have happened had the Predators traded Tolvanen at 6-7 years ago.
It's a great question. We'll take your thoughts on that. 615-737-1025, our phone number. More on the Preds offseason coming up next with Adam Vingan. Robbie and Rexroad, 1025-1063, The Game. Purchase your tickets now for the Music City Grand Prix at the Nashville Superspeedway, Friday, September 13th through Sunday, September 15th at musiccitygp.com. As the racing station, 102.5 The Game has a special offer that is for a limited time. Use promo code GAME for a 20% discount now through June the 16th. So make sure you get involved with that. We'll have Caroline Fenton coming up at 7 o'clock. Alex Doherty from the Tennessean at 8. Taking your thoughts right now on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Skyler on the text line says Evangelista would be requested if anybody is involved with a trade. When it comes to the young guys that are NHL ready, if the Predators are entertaining the idea of making a big trade this offseason, I can certainly see a path where a team, as a part of a package the other way, might ask for Luke Evangelista to be involved with that.
Yeah, it's hard not to see that. Evangelista had a promising first full season in the NHL. It's almost the same conversation we were having about Askarov and, by extension, Tolvanen.
Yep.
Like, there's that potential, right? He was in the league all year, put up some points.
He was like the one young forward this year that I think you feel really, really good about. Not in terms of, like, I don't think Luke Evangelista is going to be Connor McDavid or anything like that. I'm just saying he stayed in the league the whole year, and there was a pretty noticeable jump. Like, by the end of the year, he was a much better player than he was to begin the year. And can you really say that about Juuso Parssinen? Can you say that about Philip Tomasino? Can you say that about Cody Glass? To me, Evangelista is the one guy at forward for sure. They got a lot better as the year went on.
I would agree with that. And we were talking, we being me in the midday show, we were talking about Martin Necas recently. Yep. And, there were a lot of rumors about him leaving Carolina, and I believe the Predators had been mentioned as a potential landing spot. And I said, if I'm the Hurricanes, I'm asking for Evangelista.
Yep.
Or I'm asking for Tommy Novak as part of a package for Martin Necas. But I guess the question is, for Predators fans, is if you're moving Luke Evangelista as part of a deal, if the opportunity presents itself, so Evangelista he's 22.
Yeah.
If you're a Predators fan and you have the opportunity to acquire via trade like a forward in like 25, 26, still young, but much more established, would you be willing to part with Evangelista to get that forward?
Yeah,
if Martin Necas becomes available and the Predators call and their GM says to Barry Trotz, we'll give you Necas, but it has to start with Evangelista as part of that package. Are you doing it? If I'm being the armchair GM, which I am, RIP again to Cap Friendly and their wonderful armchair GM tool, I'm saying yes. Okay. I would be absolutely willing to move Luke Evangelista for someone like Martin Necas, a younger forward but a more established forward in the NHL.
I would certainly listen to it. Yeah, like I'm not going to sit here and say that there's no way I'd listen to it for sure. Now, in order to do it, like I'm not just putting him in a package to put him in a package. Like, you better bring something really good back for it, right? Like Necas is interesting because, like, if you watch him play, he's got all the ability in the world, right? Like, he's a big guy. He moves well. He's got really good offensive instincts. And then you look at his production, and he had a great year 2 years ago, right? 28 goals, 43 assists, 71 points. And it kind of felt like that was his breakout season. This last year was good. 24 goals, 29 assists, 53 points if you're just going by traditional stats. It wasn't great. So he's an interesting kind of guy moving forward here. He's 25 right now. Again, he's got all of the ability in the world. It was just when you watch him play. Let's say the Predators went out and acquired him. What do you think Necas could do away from Carolina in this system? What sort of a player do you think he can be if he gets into an opportunity where maybe he's more consistently higher in the lineup and in a bigger role than he was in Carolina? And it's not like he wasn't in a big role in Carolina, but he'd have I think we would all agree, a bigger role here.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's part of the issue, reportedly, is that he is not getting the opportunities that he wants in Carolina.
Yeah.
I think he would be a great fit here. If you're just looking at the style of player that he is and what Andrew Burnett wants to do offensively, I think they go hand in hand. Necas is great with speed. His ability to attack off the rush, his ability to generate offense that way, his ability to get up and down the ice, all of those things would seem to fit in with what Andrew Burnett wants to do. And here he would absolutely have more of an opportunity. He would be a focal point, I believe, of the team's offense. So from a stylistic standpoint, I feel like it's hard not to like what Martin Necas would bring to the Predators. Another player, again, someone I've talked a lot about with Willie, that would also check a lot of those boxes who could be available is Nikolai Ehlers in Winnipeg. Very similar player to Necas in terms of how good he is with speed. And if you're looking to become more dynamic off the rush, a player like Necas, a player like Ehlers, I think, Ehlers is in the same situation in Winnipeg. A really good player, but was like 6th or 7th among their forwards in ice time. But still put up a lot of points in a limited time, despite, he's not playing as much as Kyle Connor or Mark Scheifele or any of those guys. And he's been in the league for almost 10 years, which is hard to believe. Yeah. But, remember when the Predators were playing the Jets in the playoffs, it was Scheifele and Wheeler and Connor and Laine. They had multiple forwards who were ahead of Ehlers in the pecking order, and that really hasn't changed. Yep. He's another change of scenery candidate. And, again, like Necas, a player who thrives with speed. Another player I think that would fit really well here.
Well, and one thing they need is, yes, they need more speed. They also need more finishers on the rush. They actually did a pretty decent job last year, I thought, of generating rush chances with the group that they had. I think they need more finishers on the rush, right? Obviously that's going to be a big part of what Andrew Burnett does and the type of game that he wants to play. You got to find more people that when you create those opportunities can put the puck in the back of the net. Let's go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Welcome in Weston. Weston, good morning. Thanks for calling in.
Good morning, guys. Listening to you guys talk about Martin Necas and listening to the idea of possibly trading away Evangelista, I'm kind of hesitant on that move simply because if you go back after Arvidsson had that breakout campaign in the playoffs and everything, and then he got traded to L.A. for a second round and a third round pick, we lost out on that speed threat. We lost out on that kid that could really break the ice open. And I feel like that's what Evangelista could be. After watching him some this year, he just had that innate ability to be able to create space, especially as a young kid. So really, I would opt out of trading him away if you really could, simply because I don't want to see another situation where we lose a guy like that and then regret it later. So I'll hang up and listen.
Yeah, thanks for the call, Weston. Well, look, let me first say, I don't want to trade Luka Evangelista either, right? I think he's got the chance to be a pretty good player. Does he have a chance to be an elite player? I don't know about that, but I think he's got a chance to be a pretty good player. So no, in a perfect world, I don't want to trade Luka Evangelista. We talked about them getting younger, right? Well, you're not getting younger by trading away Luka Evangelista. So I don't want to do that. I don't know that him and Arvidsson are exactly the same. Arvidsson for sure had the speed element, and when he was on, that's what made him really good. Evangelista really doesn't have breakaway speed. He's really shifty, and he's really smart. That's what makes him, I think, a good player is, and Andrew Burnett's talked about this. He's got a really high hockey IQ, and he's able to kind of anticipate where the play is going, which is something that's difficult to quantify, but you can just kind of see it when he's out there playing. So I'm with you. I don't want to trade Luka Evangelista either, but I think you're exactly right, Adam. If you're another team out there that's looking for a deal and you're trading a significant asset back to the Predators, certainly I'm asking about Evangelista if I'm one of those teams.
Right. That's sort of my point. If you are going to make a deal for an impact forward and UC Saros is off the table, again, right, assuming that they re-sign him because it feels like it's going that way.
It does.
And, if they're still committed to Askarov, which I've said multiple times on this station that you have to choose one or the other, and I know you believe this too. Like if you re-sign Saros, you have to move Askarov.
I agree.
So I mean, Askarov might not be enough to get you that type of player, but if you are another team, like look at the assets the Predators have. You're not getting Philip Forsberg. You're not getting Roman Josi. They have full no movement clauses. So in terms of the young impact players on the NHL roster, you don't have a ton of choice.
Yeah.
For me, it's Evangelista with a bullet in that regard, and then Tommy Novak underneath that because he's signed to a really good deal, and teams like that cost certainty, even though the cap is going up, all that stuff. But I'm just saying that if you're looking to add that type of forward, like the way that you might have to be prepared for the possibility. And here's another thing too about the Evangelista move, potential, armchair GM type move. There's still part of me. Look, the history of Predators forwards drafted and developed by the team that pop, it's low.
Very
right?
low. Yeah.
I guess you can throw Philip Forsberg in there. He wasn't drafted by the team, but we all know he was developed by the team.
Yeah.
But other than that, you had Arvidsson popped for a few seasons. Kevin Fiala became a really good player after he left Nashville. I just feel like the history of Predators drafted and developed forwards becoming high impact players, it's not a great track record. I mean, I like to always throw this out there. The leading scorer in terms of points all time in the NHL by forwards drafted by the Predators is Scott Hartnell.
Yeah.
He's the highest scoring forward in the NHL ever drafted by the Predators. We love Scott Hartnell on this station.
We do.
Scott Hartnell, great guy. Really great career.
Good player.
Good player. But that to me, that kind of, stands out in terms of their ability to draft and develop forwards. They can draft solid middle six guys.
Yeah.
But the first and second line guys, it's been difficult. So part of me is like, where's Evangelista's ceiling? Is he going to top out as a Craig Smith type who had a lot of value for the Predators, consistently scored 20 goals, but wasn't a game changer?
Right.
So that kind of sits with me as I watch Evangelista develop.
We'll have more of your thoughts on the Pred, 615-737-1025, our phone number. More coming up next. Robbie and Rexroad, 1025-1063, The Game. Welcome back in, Robbie and Rex Road, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Adam Vingan, Nick Keys are here with you on this Tuesday morning, taking your thoughts on the Preds. Let's go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. And welcome in Bob in Antioch. Bob, good morning. Thanks for calling in.
Good morning, guys. Is Lankinen an unrestricted free agent?
Yes.
He is.
So there's basically no way that he could be back. I was just thinking maybe if they, I guess it would have to occur very quickly, if they traded Askarov, would there be a chance that they would keep Lankinen as a backup, or does he want to try to be a number one goalie someplace?
I think Bob, I think they would really like to have him back. The sense I get is he is going to be looking for an opportunity, maybe not to start. Like I don't know if there's an opportunity out there that currently exists where Kevin Lankinen is a starting goaltender. Maybe there is. I think he's certainly going to look for it. But I do think at the very least he will look for a situation where he can play more than he does here.
I feel like a lot of the free agent goaltenders this offseason are the 1B types.
Yeah.
Like guys who are not starters, but if you put them in a platoon with a guy and he maybe can start 30 to 35 games, I think like Laurent Brossoit and Winnipeg. I'm trying like Ilya Samsonov in Toronto, Cam Talbot in Los Angeles, like that, like the type of goalie that Lankinen kind of is, that 1B / high-end backup. There are a lot of goalies out there. By the way, I just wanted to read this list. I mentioned in the last segment that Scott Hartnell is the highest scoring forward drafted by the Predators in NHL history. 707 career points for Scott Hartnell.
Good player.
I'm going to read you the rest of the top 5. So remember, drafted by the Predators. So Philip Forsberg is not on this list, but you could include him. There's the asterisk if you want to put there. Number 1, Scott Hartnell. Number 2, David Legwand. Number 3, Martin Erat. Number 4, Patrick Hornquist. Number 5, Craig Smith.
It's not good.
That's not good. And that's why, for as promising as Evangelista was last season, there's still a little part of me that wonders, like, how much more. I mean, he's very young, but just the history that we have in front of us about, forwards becoming these huge game-changing players for the Predators when they're in their system. There's part of me that wonders if Evangelista is going to top out as a 20 to 25 goal, 40 to 50 point guy, which again, there is value in that.
Yeah.
But that's not the type of player that, changes the trajectory of your franchise.
Yeah, I think it's a fair question. Look, I've said this about him before. I think he's better than that. I don't think he's I think he's somewhere between Philip Forsberg and Craig Smith, if that makes any sense.
Okay.
I don't think he's going to be as good as Philip Forsberg. I think he's probably a little better than Craig Smith. So there's value there.
Do you see him having like a Victor Arvidsson-like impact over that? When you look at the peak Victor Arvidsson in Nashville,
I could see that.
Do you see that as Evangelista's ceiling?
Yeah, somewhere around there. Like I don't think he's going to be. I don't think he's going to be like an elite first line player. Evangelista is more of a playmaker than he is.
Yes.
But yeah.
But if he but in terms of points, 61, 61, 48.
Yeah.
So if Evangelista turns into a consistent 50-point player, that's great. But is that the type of player that's going to turn you into a Stanley Cup contender? The teams that are Stanley Cup contenders need players like that.
For sure.
But he's not. I remain skeptical that he's going to become,
top line.
He's not going to be Carter Verhaeghe out there, I don't think.
So there's one other part of this that I think is really kind of the question of the offseason. And we brought up the age. They're one of the, you brought up the roster freeze at the end of the year, 27th in the league. So they're one of the oldest teams in the league. My question is, does Barry Trotz, let's say he takes an aggressive approach and they add in free agency and they believe that right now they're equipped to try and continue to move forward and win.
Mm-hmm.
Can you do that in a time frame that is quick enough before you look around and you say, well, Roman Yossi's 35, Ryan O'Reilly's 35. They did get rid of the McDonough contract, which I think is probably going to serve them well moving forward, just in terms of the age and the money and all that stuff. But are they close enough where they can add quickly enough to compete for a championship? Because I think one of the things, like if you're a Predators fans that you fear is they continue to try to add on to this roster and it's just not good enough. And then in 3 years, you find yourself in the same position where it's like, all right, they're going to need to go in a rebuild. Like you have to, they're going to have to get significantly younger. And I think we all know they have to get younger. Like my question is, are they going to be able to do that? Like I like a lot of the young players they have in their system. I think LaRue's got a chance to be good. We'll see about Kemmel. I have questions about Parsonen and Tomasino and how impactful they're actually going to be moving forward here. So what you don't want to see happen, I think if you're a Predators fan, like the worst case scenario here is for them to just continue to double down, and then in 2 years you find yourself saying, all right, this is a really old roster. They're not really all that close to competing for a championship, and you have to go through a rebuild again. Like that's kind of what this last couple years is supposed to have been, right?
Right, and Barry Trotz has said multiple times that he is not interested in doing the burn it down kind
Correct.
of rebuild because I spoke to him before the playoffs, and he said like once you accept losing, it's hard to learn how to win. That's paraphrasing what he said. So he's not interested in tanking basically. What I thought was interesting was there was a story last week that Tom Fitzgerald, former Predators captain, GM of the Devils, at the NHL, draft combine, scouting combine, said that they're looking for goaltending. Everybody knows the Devils are looking for goaltending, and it sounds like he'd be willing to move that number 10 pick for a goalie.
Yeah.
And it led to Jared and I were talking about this a little bit. I think you and Joe might have talked about this a little bit. Like, it's going to take acquiring that kind of draft pick. You're going to have to make him. If you're Barry Trotz and you are not willing, and I'm not begrudging him for it, if you are not willing to tear it down so that you have the opportunity to pick at the top of the draft, you would need to be aggressive and get that type of pick. He tried last summer.
He did.
He tried last summer to move into the top 5 to pick, that impact young player. It did not work. I think he has to continue to do that. I think he has to find a way to make the type of move so that if they're hell bent on signing Saros and the Devils are willing to take a Skarov for the number 10 pick in the draft, I do it.
I would too.
They're going to have to be aggressive in making that type of move to move from 22 or wherever they're drafting up into the top 8 to 10. Like that's what it's going to take. And to Barry Trotz's credit, he did attempt to do that last summer. I think he has to continue to try to do that because you can add in free agency, you can make trades, but I do think drafting high in the draft and taking that young player that can change the fortune of your franchise potentially, you have a higher percentage chance of doing that if you're at the top of the draft. I think that's what he needs to do. I think he needs to stay aggressive to try to move into the top of the draft.
It's a really good point. We'll be joined by Caroline Fenton coming up next. We'll get her thoughts on this, get her thoughts on the Titans as well. You're listening to Robbie and Rex Road, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Hour number 2, Robbie and Rex Road, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Adam Vingan, Nick Keyser here with you on this Tuesday morning. And we welcome in our friend Caroline Fenton to the program, host of Caroline, Willie, and D-Mace. Before we get rolling on some of the stuff we want to get to, you began the show yesterday with a little bit of an announcement. For those who may have missed it, fill us in on as much as you can on what's going on with you right now.
Yes. So this is my final week at the station. I was given a really wonderful opportunity being able to do some dream work that I just simply could not pass up. So I'm moving on to a different opportunity, which I'm very excited about, but also very sad about. It's mixed emotions leaving the station and trying something new. So yes, this is my final week at the station, but I'll still be in Nashville. I'll still be filling in on the station. I'll still be hosting Jared versus Joe. So I'm not going too far. You'll still be able to hear me. But in terms of what's next, I'll be able to share that very, very soon. So I cannot wait to share that with everybody. But for now, just grateful for everything that the station and that you and Joe and everyone has given me over the last 3 years.
Well, we are very grateful for you as well. You've done an outstanding job, and we're very excited for you moving forward here. So just wanted to give you the opportunity to throw that out there as for those who may have missed it yesterday. But, again, we'll have more information on that here in the coming days here. But appreciate everything you've done, Caroline. On that front, we were just talking about the Predators offseason, and a potential trade piece that we brought up was Luke Evangelista. Like, if the right deal came, would you be willing to move Luke Evangelista if you're Barry Trotz? He's 22. Like, you don't want to get older. It's already one of the oldest teams in the league when you just look at the roster. But if the right deal came along, say it was Marty Necas, and Carolina wanted Evangelista as part of the package, would that be something you're willing to do if you're Barry Trotz? Would that be a non-starter based on his production, his age, what you project him to be? How do you view the Evangelista part of this?
Yeah, I would be hesitant, but I would have to ask myself, okay, what am I getting in return? Because the last thing that I want to see the Predators do is mortgage the future for the right now. Because frankly, right now, this is not a cup contending team. And I do not think that it's a Marty Necas away from being a cup contender. Now, I don't think that you're a Luke Evangelista away from being a cup contender. But what I think is so encouraging about this team is the young and encouraging pieces, is the fact that the Predators have never drafted and developed that elite premier scorer. Can Luke Evangelista be that? I don't know. Like, is he the next Austin Matthews? I don't think so. But can he be really freaking good in this league? I think that he can be, because he's 22 and he's already showed us, what he could potentially be in this league. So I would be incredibly hesitant, especially if it's for like a Marty Necas kind of player that's, he's good. He's not great. Now, if it's a Mitch Marner kind of situation, then I might be a little bit more willing to listen in on it, since you're getting a more proven commodity in return. I would be hesitant just because I'm encouraged about this young core, and I want to see what these young guys can eventually develop into. And also, who fits into Andrew Burnett's system? If Andrew Burnett looks at it and says, hey, look, Luke Evangelista just doesn't quite fit the bill, then okay, maybe I'm more willing to move on from a guy like that versus a guy that Andrew Burnett looks at and says, okay, 5 to 7 years from now, like, that's going to be my go-to guy. I think that the system is an incredibly important part of this as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. On the Titans front, Caroline, OTA's minicamp, that part of the year wrapping up. We're right around the corner from training camp. And a lot of this season, as we know, is going to come down to Will Levis. How good is Will Levis? What sort of step does Will Levis take? What do you make of what you've seen, what you've heard about Will Levis this offseason, and where he is, your confidence level in him heading into year 2?
Well, he threw the ball in the lake.
That's what I heard.
So it still just tickles me pink. Just that mental image that I have of Will Levis just launching an absolute cannon into the Cumberland River.
Hitting a fish.
No.
Yeah.
What did the fish do to you, Will? No, but all jokes aside, all of the reports this offseason so far, OTAs and minicamp, doesn't sound like it's been very good for Will Levis. But I will ask everyone this. Did anyone expect it to be great for Will Levis throughout the first few practices and first few weeks and months of the Brian Callahan offense, of new pass catchers, learning a new system, learning a new coaching staff learning him, a trial and error period that I'd much rather Brian Callahan figure out what Will Levis can do, and maybe even more importantly, what Will Levis can't do on June 11th versus October 14th. So I think right now they're just in a trial and error period, and I can live with that. Like, I can live with Will Levis going 3 for 10 in a 7-on-7 period in mandatory minicamp. Now, I think the important thing to look at, as we got OTAs today and throughout training camp in late July and August, is how are things coming along? How is Will Levis starting to click with this offense? How is Will Levis starting to build that chemistry with a Tyler Boyd, with a Calvin Ridley's, with some of the new pass catchers in this offense? I don't think it's fair of any of us to expect Will Levis week 1 against the Chicago Bears to look like Patrick Mahomes. I don't think Will Levis is ever going to look like Patrick Mahomes. This is what Will Levis's 4th offense in 4 years.
Yeah.
2 at Kentucky, last year with the Titans, and then obviously this year with Brian Callahan. There's been a lot of change. I do think that we're going to have to see this year some progress being made for Will Levis. Like, you can't be making some of the dumb throws, the F it YOLO throws that put the ball in harm's way. He can't be doing dumb bleep that hurts the team. He can't be going headfirst into a linebacker and just, bulldozing a defender. Can't do that when you're a franchise quarterback. So are you seeing growth? Are you seeing development? You're not going to see Will Levis be an absolute elite quarterback in the first few weeks, maybe not even at this point this season. I think the important thing for me with Will Levis is, do you have confidence moving forward in what he is? Maybe that's a franchise quarterback, and maybe that's a backup. And if that's the case, then at least and you can move on and you can start that path to finding your quarterback of the future. But I think that this year, throughout 17, 18 weeks, throughout training camp, it's about the confidence in Will Levis, Brian Callahan learning Will Levis, and Will Levis learning his role.
Caroline, when you have spent as much time as you have around Jared, your internal gauge for concern gets thrown out of whack.
Right.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah,
right.
Thank you, Nick. Yeah.
Yes. So if T'Vondre Sweat does not practice in the final minicamp practice, and we don't potentially see him until a training camp, is your internal concernometer off the charts, or are you taking a more not relaxed, but a more, what's the word I'm looking for here?
Calm.
Yeah. Are you taking a calmer approach to the T'Vondre Sweat situation if you don't see him on the field today or whenever the last practice is?
My internal concernometer will not be off the charts. Like, I'm picturing that movie Inside Out, where the little anger emotion just like gets on fire. It's a great movie. That's not going to be me. I'm not going to be absolutely irate, freaking out, because if he's hurt, he's hurt. And I don't need to see him on the field just to see him on the field, just to prove that he's there. You know what I mean? But I will be concerned, because Brian Callahan said, 2, 3, maybe even 3 weeks ago, maybe even a month ago, that what T'Vondre Sweat is dealing with is minor.
Yep.
And look, if it's minor, then a month later, 3 weeks later, he should be able to be finding his way back on the field. Here's my thing with T'Vondre Sweat. Look, if he's hurt, he's hurt. I don't force it, don't push it. But this was our concern on draft night. This was all of our concerns with drafting T'Vondre Sweat, the 38th overall pick, a guy that was in fact overweight, a guy that did have character concerns. These are all of the concerns on draft night coming to fruition. It's like, hey, started dating this guy with a couple of red flags, and no, he hasn't cheated on me, but he follows an awful lot of Instagram models on Instagram. So it's just kind of confirming some concerns. Training camp is really when the concernometer will start to get off the charts. Today, I will be, looking for reports, because obviously we can't be out there at practice when our show is in the middle of practice. I'll be looking for reports to see if T'Vondre Sweat is out there. And honestly, we've talked a lot about T'Vondre Sweat not being out there. Nicholas Petit-Frere not being out there is also a big concern of mine. If he is, in fact, going to be the starting right tackle for this team, he's going to have to start to get on the field and get some work in, because Nicholas Petit-Frere largely has not been available, whether if it was his fault or not, gambling or injuries. He needs to get out there if he's going to be the starting right tackle for this offensive line.
Yep, no question about it. Caroline, great stuff as always. Again, we're very proud of you. Thanks so much for taking time
Thanks,
to be
Rob.
with us this morning, and we'll be listening at 11 o'clock.
Y'all are the best. Thanks, Rob.
Yep, absolutely. Caroline Fenton, our guest here on Robbie and Rex Show. We'll react to what Caroline had to say, take more of your thoughts on the Titans, your confidence level in Will Levis heading into year 2. Getting more into that coming up next. Robbie and Rex Road, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Tune in to 94.9 The Fan today as the Nashville Sounds take on the Gwinnett Stripers on the road. Pre-game at 5:50, first pitch 6:05. Coverage available on the 94.9 The Fan app and at 949thefan.com. Sounds baseball presented by Twin Peaks, Family Leisure, and 5 Points Roofing and Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. Sounds back in action today, taking on Gwinnett. Make sure you're tuning in for that at 6:05 with first pitch. Thanks to Caroline Fenton for being with us in the last segment. Titans back on the field later today. And then after that, it's pretty much training camp is the next thing that's on the docket for the Tennessee Titans. Adam, I'll ask you the same question I asked her. Obviously, like so much of this season is going to be about Will Levis. And yes, it's about the record and it's about the team and Brian Callahan's first season. And can you take some steps forward with the additions they've made in the offseason? All those things are important. But the most important part about this season is the development of Will Levis and more of an answer at the end of the year as to whether or not he's going to be your long-term answer at quarterback. When you factor in everything around him right now, the coaching change after the first season, the additions that have been made this offseason by Rand Carthon, specifically in free agency on the offensive side of the ball, how do you look at Will Levis heading into year two? What's your confidence level in Will Levis heading into what's going to be a crucial year, not only for him, but really for this franchise, as you try to map out what it's going to be for the Titans as they move forward here?
He's certainly set up for success because, as you mentioned, the Titans paid a premium to, give him more pass-catching weapons. We know they added Calvin Ridley and Tyler Boyd. Tony Pollard can catch the ball out of the backfield. We should see an increased role for Tajay Spears, who can also catch the ball out of the backfield, something that Derrick Henry couldn't really do. He did it at times, but it wasn't his specialty.
Still really wish we missed out on if the Baltimore Ravens run a wheel route with Derrick Henry this year and he goes up and high points the ball, I'm going to be really upset because I was calling for that for 5 years for the Titans.
Good thrower though. When
quarterback rating's outstanding.
Yeah, right. I remember the one that he had against the Colts that just missed with DeAndre Hopkins going out of bounds. But anyway, Brian Callahan, an offensive-minded coach versus, of course, Mike Vrabel, who was not an offensive-minded coach. There's a lot to like about what the Titans have put around Will Levis. Of course, there are the obvious concerns about the offensive line and, will J.C. Latham help? Will Lloyd Cushenberry help? Will Bill Callahan help? Of course, that's really the focal point is if Will Levis has enough time to make the kinds of throws that we have seen him make, in his young NFL career and in his collegiate career. But I agree with what multiple people have said on this station, that I feel this season it feels like success will hinge on whether or not we find out if Will Levis is the type of quarterback they can build around.
Yeah.
If the Titans go 7-10, but Will Levis shows enough improvement, shows enough promise that you feel like you've got something there once he continues to grow, I would consider that a success. I don't think anyone believes this team is going to win a championship next season.
No.
No one believes they're going to win the division. I think, I like what the Houston Texans have been doing. I expect them to be the overwhelming favorite to win the AFC South next season. So it really does come down to Will Levis. If he takes enough strides, even if the Titans have a losing record or miss the playoffs, I think as a Titans fan, you can feel good about it if you see enough from Will Levis this season.
I agree. I think it also comes down to not even just like the tangible things that you see from him, but we've talked about this. There are going to be moments along the way where they need a big drive or they need to extend the lead in the fourth quarter. Can he do that? I think it would be a mistake for Titans fans to look at it and say, well, if the Titans go 8-9 or better this year, then we feel good about Will Levis. If they're 7-10 or worse, we don't. I think that would be a mistake to view.
It's independent of the record.
It is. Now, having said that, I do think that if Will Levis takes a big step forward and is is playing really well, that's gonna pay off in the record. It has to, right?
Yes.
Like if Will Levis takes a big step forward and is really good this year, then the Titans could be a playoff team. I mean, I believe that. I don't think that's outside of the realm of possibility at all. I mean, we see that in this league all the time. I mean, we saw it last year in Houston, right? They got good quarterback play. They changed some stuff up with their roster. They were aggressive with how they built their roster. They hired a new head coach, and they were in the playoffs. Made it to the divisional round of the playoffs. It's not as simple as that every time. I'm just saying, like, if Will Levis comes in and plays really well, and this is a good fit immediately in the Brian Callahan offense, then it should pay off in the record. But I do think there are circumstances that you always have to be mindful of and evaluate when it comes to the quarterback position. And to me, that's what this year is about. You know, if let's say they made the playoffs and Will Levis got hurt halfway through the year and Mason Rudolph took them on some magical run, would it be fun? Sure. Like, playoffs are great. So there's nothing wrong with that. But to me, more so than making the playoffs, more so than winning the division, this year is about Levis. Like, if you walk away from this season and you are convinced that Will Levis is your quarterback of the future, then to me it's a successful year. Like, that's what this is about. And on the flip side, like, if you walk away from this season and you're really hesitant and you're like, I don't know, man. Like, it wasn't great. He did not take the steps forward that we expected him to take this year, then I think we're probably having a different conversation next offseason. That is, all right, are you staying the course with Will Levis one more year? Are you looking at quarterbacks in the draft with Brian Callahan and allowing him to pick his own guy? Like, it's a pretty wide swing to me in terms of what this could be for Will Levis after this season. And I'm not saying it all comes down to this year, because I do think he would have to be pretty darn bad for them to not go with him next year. But I'm just saying the range of possibilities is pretty wide with Will Levis this year.
And if he struggles and the team struggles and they're not committed to him, they're going to have a high draft pick most likely, and they can use it on the quarterback. So I'm not saying print your Shedeur Sanders Titans jerseys just yet.
Oh, boy.
Or your Carson Beck jerseys just yet. But, I mean, it is a big year for Will Levis. But I do think that he is set up for success. I really like the wide receiver group that he has. I mean, I know it's easy to draw parallels between the Titans and the Bengals because of Brian Callahan, but you know, it was just like Joe Burrow. I mean, Joe Burrow is on another planet compared to Will Levis right now. But just like Joe Burrow was young and he had Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd, now Will Levis has Tyler Boyd as well as DeAndre Hopkins and Calvin Ridley. Like, it makes a huge difference to have three tested or highly, you know, I mean, Chase wasn't tested yet, but he was an incredible talent. Incredible talent. Like, having those safety valves. I mean, think about the pass catchers that the Titans had last year. You know, Chris Moore and Hopkins and NWI. Like, you know, good for them for getting playing time in the NFL, but much different story this year. When it comes to the pass catching talent that Will Levis has at his disposal.
And I agree with everything you just said. Can they block?
What about Quinn Ewers? Quinn Ewers, Titans quarterback. Which is the
fast forward to a couple years.
Which is the least onerous of those choices?
They could get in the Nico or Arch Manning discussion too, if you really wanted to.
Yeah, you got it. You know, after taking,
I want no part of Shedeur.
After taking Will Levis,
the Coach Prime stuff around him would be exhausting.
Yes.
I can't do it.
After taking Will Levis and upsetting Tennessee football fans for taking a guy from Kentucky, he might have to take the Tennessee quarterback.
Get Nico.
Yeah,
get him in there. 615-737-1025. Our phone number. More of your thoughts on the Titans. Got some thoughts to get to on our text line. We'll do that next. Robbie and Rex Road, 1025-1063, The Game. Welcome back in, Robbie and Rex Road. We are broadcasting live from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home with the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Robbie Stanley, Adam Vinton, Nick Keys are here with you on this Tuesday morning. We got a Vengens vitriol rant coming up at 7:45.
Yeah.
Look forward to that. A nice Adam Vingan rant.
I was sitting somewhere when something happened to me when I knew I would be filling in this week. I said, this is going to make a really great rant.
There we
It
go.
may not be great, but it will be good to get off my chest.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. Coming up at 7:45. Alex Doherty from the Tennessean will join us at 8 o'clock. We'll get into some of the Predators offseason discussion that we had earlier in the show with Alex at 8 o'clock as well. So looking forward to all that. Right now, taking your thoughts, 615-737-1025. Our phone number, 615-737-1025. Got a texter that says, do you think the Titans should go ahead and sign DeAndre Hopkins to his extension, so at least going into 2025, if Levis works out, he's got the same weapons 2 years in a row to be able to grow with? What do you make of the Hopkins part of this? And if you're the Titans, should you take a gamble on Hopkins, go ahead and try to sign him to an extension, and that way he is in place for your quarterback if you're feeling good about that moving forward?
Maybe I'm thinking about this the wrong way. I mean, Hopkins had a good season last year, no doubt. But he was also, the unquestioned alpha of the wide receiver group.
Yeah.
Now, Calvin Ridley does something, Calvin Ridley brings something different to the table, as does Tyler Boyd. I'm wondering what his impact will be now that there are more mouths to feed in terms of pass catchers.
Yep.
What do you think about that?
Well, you could view it a couple ways. Like last year, he had 75 catches for over 1,000 yards, and he was really the one threat that they had in terms of catching the ball. So you could view that and say, all right, it was an offense that couldn't protect the quarterback, that had no other weapons on the outside to speak of, that played in a system that does not throw the ball as much as we anticipate the Titans are going to throw the ball this year, and he still had 75 catches for over 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns. So that could go up. Like if they're throwing the ball more and you've got more options and he's singled up more in coverage and you protect the quarterback more, you could say, well, that should lead to more opportunity and more production from DeAndre Hopkins. Now, you could also view it as, well, Calvin Ridley's going to get a lot of passes. Tyler Boyd's going to catch a lot of balls over the middle. You're hoping for, I think, better production than you got from the tight end position last year with a combination of Wiley and Chig. So I do think it's possible that Hopkins can be every bit as good as he was last year, and instead of 75 catches, you're talking 65. Instead of 1,000 yards, you're talking 820. And what does that do in terms of his next contract, how you view his season, all those things? Like I think that's entirely possible. To me, though, like watching him play, and I felt this way last year too, it's beyond even the numbers. Like the numbers were good, but I felt like DeAndre Hopkins played better than even the numbers indicated last year. Mm-hmm. 75 catches, over 1,000 yards. But he's just reliable. That's what it is. Like if you're paying for him, you're paying for the reliability of him. And look, he's going to be 32. I think he just had a birthday a couple days ago. So he's 32, and he's going to be in a situation where his best days are behind him. Like DeAndre Hopkins is not going to be the same Hopkins that he was last part of his career with the Texans, first part with the Cardinals. I think we all get that. But if he can approach what he gave you last year on a consistent basis with the added production that you expect from Ridley and Boyd, then I think you'll take that. And I think that's worth considering going ahead and trying to lock up the year after that.
So there was a 60 target discrepancy between DeAndre Hopkins and the next closest player on the team.
Yeah.
Chig Okonkwo had 77 targets. So it was Hopkins with 137, Chig with 77. I wonder where that ranked in the NFL in terms of gap between first and second receivers, running backs or tight ends in terms of targets. It went 137 for Hopkins, 77 for Chig Okonkwo, 70 for Spears, 45 for Nick Westbrook-Ikhine.
Honestly, I'm kind of surprised Chig was that high. But
yeah, but that I imagine that's going to be more evenly dispersed now.
I would assume.
With more mouths to feed, with more tested pass catchers. So I would agree. I mean, Hopkins I thought was really good last year. I thought the numbers were solid. I would agree with you that I felt like, I mentioned the trick play that the Titans ran against the Colts. I think it was the game in Indianapolis where Henry had Hopkins over the top and Hopkins got 1 foot in bounds.
Yeah.
Like I felt like there were a lot of missed opportunities for Hopkins where that were no fault of his own, that he could have had even better numbers had, he stayed in bounds or, the ball was placed in a different play, a different area. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if you need to re-sign Hopkins right now. I feel like that's something you can explore during the season. I feel like he certainly acquitted himself well last year. I just want to see how it looks with all of these other guys in there first before I make a commitment.
Got a texter that says, after this year, I'd rather have Ridley and Boyd on the team for Levis as long as they all click together. Ridley, we know is going to be there. Boyd's playing for next to nothing right now. I mean, when they signed him to his deal, I was like, wow, they got Tyler Boyd that cheap. So, I mean, this is kind of I don't want to say prove it deal because at his age, I don't know how much it's going to get better in terms of his options out there, but I am really interested to see what he looks like in this offense with Will Levis, because to what they signed him for, I mean, he could end up being an incredible bargain for the Titans. So we'll see what that part of it looks like. I got somebody wondering if Levis plays all 17 games, what do you think his season stats will be? I don't know. That's an interesting question because 4,000 yards used to be a big deal in the NFL. And now, not that it's not a big deal, but it's way more common now. Like 4,000 yards is a more reachable number than it used to be. So could he get there? Like, could Will Levis get to 4,000 yards if things go really well? Could he get to 25 touchdowns this year? Could he be in the conversation when you start talking about, touchdown interception ratio? Could he be 24 touchdowns, 25 touchdowns, 7-8 picks? Like that to me is going to be interesting to see with the weapons that he's got. If you can get some level of blocking, can Will Levis put up the type of numbers that you want to see from the quarterback position?
Let's use your guy Jordan Love as a barometer. The Jordan Love last season, 4,159 yards, 32 touchdowns, 11 interceptions.
Yeah.
If Will Levis plays all 17 games, do you think Jordan Love's numbers last year are attainable? Or do you think
I think if I'm a Titans fan and you told me right now that's what it was going to be, I'd sign up for it today.
Yeah. I don't think it's going to be that. But let's say it's 4,000 yards, let's use 4,000 yards, 25 touchdowns, 10 interceptions.
I mean, I'd probably sign up for that.
Yeah.
That
was a 96.1 rating for Love last regular season.
Yeah. Levis, I think if you're looking at it realistically, there's going to be some growing. I mean, he's played 9 games. There's going to be some bad outings from him this year.
And Love entering last season had played 10 games in the regular season.
Yeah.
But he had been in the league longer, obviously.
He'd been in the league longer, and look, it's just a different situation. They've got in Green Bay, a pretty good offensive line.
Yes.
They've got a coach that's been there for a while. So it's a different It's
not
situation,
a perfect comparison
but it is it's very similar in terms of just experience. And look, I think Jordan Love's got a huge arm. Levis has got a huge. There are some similarities there when it comes to just skill set that they bring to the table. But if I'm the Titans, I'm not saying you don't care about the stats, because I think sometimes we've said that around here as Titans observers and Titans fans, because the stats have never really added up to some of the other players you've seen around the league. I think stats are important. I think stats tell part of the story. But again, it's more complicated than just, well, if Will Levis has 3,800 yards, he's had a good year, and if he doesn't, he hasn't. But I do think, again, if things are going well, a lot of times the stats are kind of the byproduct of that. And if he can stay healthy all 17 games and you tell me that there's some level of blocking for him, then yeah, I think he can have a pretty good year. What the most important traditional stat for me this year, beyond the yards and touchdowns, what do the interceptions look like? Can he take care of the football? Because that's still, to me, a big question for him moving forward here as to can he protect the ball? Can he make good decisions? And if he does, I think he's got enough ability in other parts of his game to where you can feel pretty good about it at the end of the year. I still wonder about protecting the football and what that's going to look like. We'll have Vingan's Vitriol coming up next, Adam Vingan's rant of the day, Alex Doherty at 8 o'clock, talking all things Nashville Predators and the Predators offseason coming up. All that ahead. You're listening to Robbie and Rex Road, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Hey, Robbie Stanley here. If you're running a fast-growing business in Nashville, listen up. NetSuite's Business Grows Here event is coming to Nashville on Tuesday, June 25th, right around the corner, and you don't want to miss it. Why Nashville? Because NetSuite knows Nashville is a hub for entrepreneurs with forward-thinking founders, a top talent pool, and pro-business leadership. Apply to attend the business event of the year, Business Grows Here, taking place at the Conrad Hotel on Tuesday, June 25th. You'll learn how Tennessee is paving the way for new business growth and capital, see how technology fueled by AI is shaping the way we grow and run our businesses, and you'll be inspired by leaders who have built and led billion-dollar businesses like Jamie Siminoff, founder of Ring Video Doorbell, and Bert Nihill, CEO of the Tennessee Titans. NetSuite by Oracle Business Grows Here is free to attend if you qualify, so apply right now to find out because seats are going quickly. Block out your calendar for Tuesday, June 25th. Apply right now at netsuite.com/Nashville. Once again, that's netsuite.com/Nashville. There's a link for that on our website as well at thegamenashville.com/events.
Wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
This is the Rob Rant.
Put my mind to it.
Well, now that you're a little bit older, I can tell you.
Gotcha. Can't win, don't try.
It is that time of the day, normally for the Rob Rant or the Rex Rant, but Adam Vingan stepping into the podium today for his rant of the day.
It's good to hear that. All right.
He's there with no thoughts.
No, to choose from.
Oh, that's good.
I had a doctor's appointment last Thursday. It was at 9:30 a.m. But it was recommended. I don't know if this is I think this is normal practice, scheduled appointment time.
Yeah.
So that means 9:15. I left my home, I would say around 8:50. I arrived at the doctor's office around 9:10. Had to deal with, a little rush hour traffic. I didn't have to go too far. But to the office.
I guess something that begins with a 10.
Correct. My name was called at 10:07.
So 37 minutes.
Plus
after.
15.
Plus 15.
52.
Yeah.
So they asked me to arrive at 9:15 for a 9:30 appointment. And they do not call me back until 10:07.
Yeah.
It's absurd. Like it's and when you get there, right? So it was an eye appointment. So I got called back into the office and they do the intake, right? They check your vision. I had some scans done. So you don't see and then you have to wait for the doctor, the person you're actually there to see, to come see you. And that part isn't that long. So I don't think I left the office until close to 11. But just this idea of please arrive 15 minutes before your scheduled time and then have me sit there for nearly an hour before calling me back. I feel like one time I had a doctor's appointment and they were like, yeah, we're probably going to be running a little behind. Like they give you that on the front end. So if you want to arrive at like, I think like at 9:45 for your 10 o'clock appointment or something, or like whatever, that's fine.
Yeah.
But don't ask me to arrive 15 minutes before my scheduled appointment and then have me sit in the waiting room for nearly an hour.
Couple things on this. So number one, what really bothers me about that is that if I showed up 30 to 45 minutes late for the appointment, there's no way they'd see me and they would charge me for it. So you're sitting here, you would charge me for being as late as you are, but you're without fail. I don't know that I've ever gone into a doctor's appointment and been seen at the time that I was supposed to have been seen. Now, I've taken a different approach to that now, which I would advise most people to take. And it has worked for me to some degree. Usually, when I would show up when they asked me to, I would have similar experiences. Like I would be in there 30, 45 minutes past time where my appointment was supposed to be when they actually called me back. So I started showing up and checking in like 45 minutes early. I'm not sitting there like waiting anymore, like we're waiting any last time, but at least I'm out of there. Like I'm out of there if I have stuff to do after. Like I usually, if I show up, let's say I had a 9:30 appointment, like I show up at like 8:45. I'm like, hey, I'm here for my 9:30 appointment. And sometimes there have been a couple times where I've gotten in there at least a little bit early, right around where I was supposed to get in. So I've gone the opposite way. I've shown up obnoxiously early to some of these scheduled doctor's appointments, which I think they don't like, but I do it anyway.
And I understand that when you're working in a doctor's office, there's a lot going on.
Of course.
There are emergencies that could pop up, and that could change things. But in my mind, I'm like, I don't know what the first appointment of the day was. Like what time they take an appointment, right? 9:30 is pretty early.
It's pretty early.
Pretty early. It's like, how can you be behind so much already?
Yeah. Like what happened at 8:30?
Right. But to ask me to arrive at 9:15 and have me wait until 10:07.
That's pretty ridiculous.
It's absurd.
Yeah.
It's absurd. And now, to their credit, they were apologetic, and I accepted the apology. I didn't make a big deal about it then, but it still pissed me off that I'm sitting there. It's like I got here at 9:15.
Yeah.
My appointment. I did the one thing that I don't like to do, which is like go to the front desk and be like, can you give me an idea of when I'm going to be called back there?
Yeah.
I don't like being
You guys got any clue when
I
you're
don't
gonna
like
see me
being
today?
that guy because I don't want to put the people at the front desk on the spot because it's not their problem. But it's just like, did I not check in correctly? Did they not know that I'm here? And they're like, no, you're checked in. You should be calling you back soon. But it's just like an hour. Like people, like fortunately, I didn't have anything else like major scheduled for that day.
Yeah.
But sometimes people do have things
Yeah,
scheduled
like
and
the
they
lunch
can't
break.
wait. And
Yeah.
they can't wait nearly an hour. So it was very annoying.
Yeah.
It was very annoying.
John on the text line says, took my now 5-month-old in for his 4-month checkup last month, waited an hour before the doctor came in. Nurse was done, make the appointment for when you could see me, not for when you want to waste my time. I think that's a great point. Dennis says, I had to take my son to the emergency room this weekend at 9:30 p.m. with a dislocated shoulder. He was in excruciating pain. They say x-ray and say, yep, it's dislocated, and then had to sit there for 2 hours before they came back in and popped it back in place. So just sitting there with a dislocated shoulder for 2 hours while they come back in.
Yeah, emergency rooms. I give a little grace there because it's the emergency room. But right, like if it's something as simple, quote unquote simple as a dislocated shoulder, just pop that sucker back in there and let me go home.
Tell them to rub some dirt on it and let's go.
But yes, I just wish the doctors would say, okay, your appointment's at 9:30, but realistically, we're not going to see you until closer to 10:15.
Yeah.
So if you want to come at 9:50, that's okay.
Yeah, instead of showing up at 9:15, show up at 10 o'clock, and we'll be ready to see you.
Right, exactly. So I sat there when I left the office at around 11 a.m. As I said, I knew I was going to be filling in this week. I was like, this is going to make for a really good rant on Tuesday.
I like it.
So yes, to the doctor's offices. Get it together, guys. Don't tell us to arrive early if you're not going to see us until. I mean, I wonder what the percentage is. Like sometimes you take flights, right?
Yeah.
And so you go on an airplane, and sometimes if you click, like Delta does this, if you click on a certain flight, it will tell you like the percentages that it's like on time, like the percentage of this route leaving on time with it, or delayed, whatever. I feel like you need that at the doctor's office. It's like, okay, this doctor's
our appointment percentage
is
11%,
30%. Okay, I was like, okay, well, if this doctor is 30%, I'm gonna hedge and arrive when my appointment is supposed to be versus 15 minutes early. But yes, 52 minutes I waited for my appointment. It was a pain in the butt.
Coming up next, we'll be joined by Alex Doherty from the Tennessean. We'll get his thoughts on the Stanley Cup Final, get his thoughts on the Predators' offseason, which is rapidly approaching right when the Stanley Cup Final is done. It's draft time. It's free agency time right around the corner. Robbie and Rex Road, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Final hour, Robbie and Rex Road, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Adam Vingan, Nick Keyser here with you on this Tuesday morning. And we go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Welcome in our friend Alex Doherty, who covers the Nashville Predators for the Tennessean, who has been kind enough to join us on his vacation, which I want to let the record show. I gave him the option to back out of this yesterday, and he still did it. What a champion. Alex, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing good. No, it's fine. My vacation just started, so we'll just say that it starts as soon as this phone call ends.
Okay.
How about that?
Where are you vacationing?
That's what we'll go with.
I'm in Orange Beach, Alabama for now, but I'm in a couple days. I'm headed back to Middle Tennessee to attend Bonnaroo for the sixth time, I think. So I think this is number 6 for me.
Get your showers in now. We'll see how it goes.
It's going to be very hot.
Yeah, it is.
It's going to be incredibly hot.
Yes,
do you do the camping the entire time?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. He's in there.
Sounds like my version of hell. I'm glad Alex has a great time. No, I mean Bonnaroo should be great.
Yeah.
Good lineup this year.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it. Well, Alex, we were talking through some scenarios a little bit earlier in the show. I want to specifically get your thoughts on Marty Necas, just the player. And regardless of the trade package, which we'll get to that here in just a second, if the Predators found a way to add Necas, what do you think he adds to the group, and what do you think that would be the immediate impact of a player like him joining the lineup?
Well, I think he brings a couple things that I think the Predators lack right now, and the biggest one I think is size. I think the most surprising thing I think that has happened over the last several years with the Predators is, or with the NHL is, for a while it felt like you had to be young and small and skilled and fast, and then all of a sudden over the last couple of years it's like, oh no, wait, you got to be big again. You got to be physical and strong, and you got to be able to body up guys. And so, it feels like he would fit that bill. He's not huge or anything, but he has a lot of physical size to fill out the wing position. And, I was thinking about it, and I really thought about, like, where he would fit in. And who's a guy on this Predators team last year that we felt like needed a more physical edge alongside him to kind of balance him out? And that's Tommy Novak. And I was just thinking, like, a combination with Tommy Novak and Marty Necas would be really intriguing. Of course, he could fit in a lot of different places in the lineup. It's not like he would only fit there, but I felt like that kind of matchup would be great because Novak was a guy that we saw in the playoffs definitely against Vancouver. Like, just he did not have a good playoff, and size was a big part of it. And he's got the skill, he's got the puck ability to try to create offense in certain areas, and he can definitely stick handle and everything. But having a guy like Necas who has a lot more speed and size that can play off the rush as well would be great. And I'm a little surprised that, because it sounded like for a while there that Necas was basically just like on the way out. Now it sounds like the Hurricanes are kind of upping the price.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys have seen this, but it sounds like the price is just kind of way too high right now for a guy that has said he doesn't want to sign there. And if you compare him to like other RFAs who have been in situations where they don't want to sign with their original team, I mean, Alex DeBrincat was one with Ottawa, and there's been several other examples. I think that's kind of what happened with Mark Stone. But I feel like they're not really in a great negotiating position. Why are they asking for the moon here? But I don't really understand that. Maybe it's just public talk. But it feels like Marty Necas would be a great fit. But I just don't know if the price is. It seems like the price is too high to me.
So we were talking about this earlier too. The age of the roster for the Predators now it's gotten better with McDonough gone. So you got to factor that into it as well. But I think, what was it, Adam, at the roster freeze when the playoffs started, they were the 27th oldest team in the league. So there's some work that has to be done here to
it would be the
younger.
27th youngest.
27th youngest.
Yes, they were one of the oldest.
One of the oldest teams in the league. So is there any concern from your part, Alex, that if Barry Trotz adds to this group in free agency, and let's say they get, they're not going to get anybody that's ancient this offseason, but 28, 29, 30, somewhere in that neighborhood, Is there any concern that by the time you try to flip this thing around and that you're an actual quote-unquote contender, that O'Reilly's 35 and Yossi's 35 and Nyquist is gone and Forsberg's 32? Like, is there a fear that they are too old right now to the point where they can't contend quick enough and you're going to have to tear it down and rebuild in a couple years anyway? Like, how do you view the age of their roster right now and how that affects what Barry Trotz does?
You know, with the way the league works, I think most teams are in that position, right? I mean, like, you always have to plan 5 years ahead and figure out, okay, in 5 years, you know, Roman Josi might not be here anymore, and Phil Forsberg might. I mean, he's going to be however old he's going to be, 35. It feels like you always have to do that, but I will agree with you. This particular situation is a tough one because, especially if you consider that, you know, last year Barry Trotz first day on the job is like, all right, let's go get a bunch of 30-year-old players that I can trust, and then let's see what we can do. And you know, it didn't end up in anything different. I mean, they lost in the first round. So now I wonder, is he going to try to the opposite? Is he going to try to break down some, you know, break it down somewhat and go younger? I feel like there's a lot of opportunity there, but the names and the free agent market are just they're not guys that you would anticipate the Predators being in on. I mean, obviously we know Stamkos, that's not going to happen. I mean, there's other players on there that you could see him giving like a 1-year deal to, and then there's like, you know, could he re-sign Jason Zucker? I think that's probably likely, but I think you do run into that possibility of overextending your window, or at least overextending the likelihood that you're even in contention for anything, even just a playoff spot, and then really setting yourself up for failure. So, but, you know, Barry Trotz didn't clear that $25 million, or didn't clear the McDonough cap hit and have $26 million to spend for nothing. So, that's why I think you've got to look at some of the other younger options in trade to try to find a way to get younger and better now.
Alex Daugherty of the Tennessean joining us here on Robbie and Rex Road. Alex, a few weeks ago, you reported that Dan Heinold will not be returning behind the Predators bench as an assistant coach. What more can you tell us about that decision? And are there any potential replacements that intrigue you, or have you heard of any potential replacements?
Yeah, the only thing that I know is that his contract was up June 30th, or is up June 30th, I guess, and the Predators told him that they would not he would not be returning with the team. That's all I know. I mean, I have heard that he's. I mean, I don't know. This is not really confirmed news, but I have heard that he's headed to Florida, not the Panthers, but headed to Florida in some capacity. I'm not really sure what that means. That's not confirmed news, but I do know that that's what I was told. He was headed to Florida. So, you know, but take that for what it's worth. Maybe it means retirement. Maybe it means another job for a team down in Florida. But as far as the Predators goes, I do not know if it's as simple as. So I think, let me go back a second, because I think you know, Andrew Brunette, when he came in, he made it pretty much right off the bat. He said that he was going to take control of the power play, right? And he did that. He did last year to middling success. I think at times it was good, at times it was bad. Now Dan Heinold, he was in charge of the penalty kill, and while he had a great penalty kill under the last year of Hines, it wasn't great last year, and with him not being a Brunette guy, it kind of makes sense, and he already got Derek McKenzie, one of his guys, to come in, kind of fills that role. So now I'm wondering, is that extra assistant coach job going to be a power play job, you know, and is he going to go find someone that can take over the power play because Brunette realized, hey, you know what, maybe coaching the whole team and running the power play is not something I want to do. So that's the only insight I have. I think it would make sense for him to go find a power play guy. But as you know, as you both know, this team has been trying to find a power play guru to come solve the power play puzzle for nigh on a decade now, and it's just not worked. So maybe that's not where they're going.
Well, Alex, great stuff, man. Really appreciate you taking time to be with us this morning, and welcome officially to vacation. Have fun, my friend.
Yes, I will text you some pictures from Bonnaroo, and Adam, I think you wouldn't hate it as much as you think you would. I think you would be okay.
It's outside of Davidson County, so you know Adam's not going.
I feel like I can smell it though. Like I feel like I feel like it's like the cicadas a couple of weeks ago. It was just overwhelming. I just feel like during that stretch, that smell from Bonnaroo floats out from Manchester and just encapsulates into the entire Middle Tennessee region.
Wow.
It does have a smell. I can promise you that.
It has a distinct odor.
It does have a distinct odor. It's not one that I would sell at a department store fragrance counter, but
that's good. That's good.
Coming soon to
Alex.
The
have a
Nordstrom
wonderful
counter.
time.
Okay, talk to you guys later.
Alex Doherty from the Tennessee and our guest on Robbie and Rex Road. We'll react to what Alex had to say. A couple more thoughts on the Preds offseason coming up as well. Robbie and Rex Road, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in, Robbie and Rex Road, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Adam Vingan, Nick Keyser here with you on this Tuesday morning. Appreciate Alex Doherty from the Tennessean for being with us in the last segment. Get your team signed up now to play in the 615 Open at Hermitage Golf Course coming up on Thursday, June the 20th. There will be delicious sample offerings from Prince's Hot Chicken, Bavarian Beer House, and more. Enjoy Michelob Ultra, other adult beverages at our sampling stations. Afterward dinner provided by Burger Republic as well. You can sign up today at 615open.com. Taking your thoughts on the Preds, the offseason coming up. The Stanley Cup Final underway. Florida up 2-0 on Edmonton. And whenever the final's done, it's right into the draft and right into NHL free agency here in the next few weeks. So taking your thoughts on Preds and the offseason coming up. Let's go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Welcome in, Nate. Nate, good morning. Thanks for calling in.
What's up, guys? I have been asking everyone this, Adam.
All right.
My concern with the Preds offseason is Barry Trotz more concerned about the culture over potential talent. And obviously that's about Askarov and Saros. I think it's a mistake to keep both of them. And I just feel like it's another what's that player that went to Seattle?
Tolvanen.
Yeah, Tolvanen. I feel like it's a potential another Tolvanen waiting to happen. What are your thoughts on that?
Thanks for calling, Nate. I don't know that it's like another. I don't think the situation between Askarov and Tolvanen are comparable from the standpoint of, number one, it's a different position. Number two, like, you lost Tolvanen for nothing, so you're not going to lose Askarov for nothing. I do think it's interesting, like, in terms of asset management here. I'm with you. I think that if you sign Saros to an extension, which it looks like it's trending that way, I think you need to move on from Askarov pretty quickly.
I agree.
And try to recoup assets for him as much as you can. And look, the return for Askarov is not going to be great. Like, it's not going to be some big return that you get for Yaroslav Askarov. But I do think trying to use that asset and bring in some help at forward specifically is something that they should do. The Tolvanen part of this, like, one thing you brought up earlier in the show that I do think is interesting, there was so much hype around Tolvanen when he was coming over that had the Predators decided to move on from him then, I think you probably could have got a pretty big return for him. Askarov is different because he's played in North America for the last 2 years and for the most part has played well. He is a goalie, and the goalie part of it is just different than forward is. So I wonder how other teams view him in terms of a prospect. Look, the reporting is pretty strong. We know this. Barry Trotz tried to move up into the top 5 last year in the draft, and Askarov was a part of the discussions, and it didn't happen. Now, it's a top 5 draft pick, particularly in last year's draft, Adam. You had some center icemen that were really, really good and that people felt good about. So I'm not surprised that none of those teams moved out of the top 5. But I do wonder, like, how do other teams around the league view Askarov, and what could your return be for him if you decided to move on?
Right. Like, it is hard to say definitively what it could be just because goalie trades don't happen a lot in general. And oftentimes, they don't involve significant assets. For example, if I recall correctly, a couple of years ago when the Avalanche traded for Alexander Georgiev from the Rangers, I believe they got 3 draft picks out of it. And I believe it was 2/3 and a 5th, I want to say. So decent return, but nothing super exciting.
Yeah.
But my point about the Tolvanen Askarov comparison that I made earlier was, as you just said, Robbie, when Tolvanen was about to arrive in North America, he had just had a great season in the KHL. He played at the Olympics. There was so much attention and so much excitement around Eeli Tolvanen. So The idea that the Predators would trade that guy seemed absurd at that time. But I call it the mystery box, and I feel like with Askarov there is some of that as well. Now you're right, Askarov has a larger body of work in North America in the American League than Tolvanen did at the time when he came over, because Tolvanen, I think he played in the USHL for a little bit, but all of his professional experience was in Europe. So but he's still very young and still scratching the surface of his potential. And sometimes that potential is what entices teams. Like, think about what he could be. Yeah. And some teams are willing to take that risk if they really need that position.
Yep.
So that's why I think that if they're going to make this move, it needs to happen soon so that there's not more tape on Askarov. Like, take advantage, because look, Askarov could turn out to be, I'm not going to say a bust, but he could turn out to be a solid goalie, but not the kind that was worth the 11th pick in the draft.
Yeah.
And you don't want to wait too long for that to happen under your watch if you're the Predators before you decide to make a move. So I think they should take advantage of that mystery of Askarov as soon as they can, if they are going to re-sign UC Saros.
I also wonder too, and Willie has brought this up to some degree, and he and I disagree on how they should kind of view the goaltending position moving forward here. But one thing that is interesting to me, let's say they sign UC Saros to an extension this offseason. I do wonder, like, mentally, what does that do for Askarov, right? Like, I'm sure that he believes one day he's going to be the starting goaltender for the Nashville Predators. Now, if they sign Saros to an extension, doesn't necessarily rule out that he could be a part of the Predators' plans one day, but likely he is not. He would have to be somewhere else. So you're still playing for a job. Like, it's not like you're just, they signed Saros to an extension, so I'm stuck in the minor leagues the rest of my life. So you're still playing for a spot in the NHL. But I do wonder, like, from his mental standpoint, being a young player, if they sign Saros to an extension, how does he react to that? Like, how does Askarov react to that? How does it influence the way that he plays next year? Like, I'd be interested to see what that looks like.
Yeah, it's a good question, and we've talked about this in terms of whether you're on Team Saros or Team Askarov, like we're Twilight fans 10 years ago or however long that was. It's not about the player. For those of us who think, for those of us who were on the, trade UC Saros side of things, which we were both on that side.
Yeah, I almost felt like I've had to apologize to him this offseason of like, I do like you.
Yeah,
I do like UC Saros.
It's not about the player. The timing of the contracts is not. It does not line up as perfectly as it did when Saros came in with Pekka Rinne.
Yeah,
because Rinne was closer to the end of his career than the beginning. His long-term contract was running out. He did re-sign for a couple more years after that, but the timing was perfect for the changing of the guard, so to speak. This, if Saros signs an 8-year contract, theoretically, that could be, Askarov's first full season in the NHL could be Saros's first year of an 8-year contract.
Yep.
Now, is Saros going to be a great goalie throughout the entire contract? Who's to say? But, if I'm Askarov, I'm like, they just signed this guy to an 8-year contract worth, let's just say, $8 million a season. When am I gonna? Where's my opportunity?
Exactly.
Like, they made this commitment to him. They believe in him. Am I going to have a real opportunity here?
Right.
And I mean, I don't know him well enough to say how it's going to change his impact or how he plays. But if I were in the same position, I'd be like, there's no room for
upward mobility.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, it's, again, he's still playing for a job, whether it's here or somewhere else in the National Hockey League. So you're hoping, as a competitor, I mean, he responds the right way. But it is going to be interesting to see if that's the way things go here, how that shakes out. More of your thoughts, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Some big news yesterday in the coaching world from a coach who did not take a job. We'll get into that coming up next. Robbie and Rexroad, 1025, 1063, The Game. Welcome back in, Robbie and Rex Road, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. I got some tickets to give away. A pair of tickets to see Alanis Morissette at Bridgestone Arena on June 23rd. Brought to you by Green Trees. Be caller 5, 615-737-1025, our phone number. 615-737-1025. Caller 5 will win a pair of tickets to see Alanis Morissette at Bridgestone Arena on June 23rd. Brought to you by Green Trees.
And you know who you should not bring to that concert if you win those tickets? Nick Keyser, who walked in here during the break and said he had never heard of Alanis Morissette.
Who's that?
Look, she sounds familiar now.
Oh, that's good.
I didn't play anything for Joe yesterday.
Let's just point this out for the listener. Jagged Little Pill, which was Alanis Morissette's, critically acclaimed album that put her on the map, came out in June 1995, more than 3 years before Nick was born.
Yeah.
So I want to give him some slack, but I'm not going to.
I think that's a pretty famous song that we just played.
Well, that one I hear in the grocery store.
Yeah,
so that one
hears
makes
it in the
sense.
grocery store.
That's true. That is a fact. Working at Publix and going in and shopping, I hear that song. And now I hear more of her in my head now. That does make sense.
Jagged Little Pill is also a show on Broadway. Like, they turned the album into a Broadway play.
Who's that?
He goes, I don't even know who, he said, I don't even know who this is. I was like, oh, my God.
I don't know that I've ever seen Vin get so upset in my life.
I weep for the future. I do.
And Vin goes around Peter Laviolette. He still wasn't that upset.
No, but so it's going to be a great show. Alanis Morissette, great artist. Don't take Nick. He doesn't deserve it.
Dan Hurley turning down the L.A. Lakers job yesterday, Vingan. So reportedly a 6-year, $70 million contract offered by the Lakers to Dan Hurley, who has won back-to-back national championships as the head coach of the men's basketball team at UConn. So the Kentucky job comes open this offseason with Calipari leaving and going to Arkansas. A lot of people, a lot of Kentucky fans immediately was like, Dan Hurley, go get Dan Hurley. And it became pretty clear early in the process that was not going to happen and that he wasn't leaving UConn to go coach Kentucky. And then the Lakers job comes open, and it's about, J.J. Redick this, J.J. Redick that. And then last week, out of the blue, the Lakers are closing in on Dan Hurley. They want Dan Hurley to be the coach. And apparently, according to reports, he gave it serious consideration over the weekend. And then yesterday came to the decision that he was turning them down and that he is remaining at UConn to go chase another national title. What do you make of the Dan Hurley saga as it relates to the L.A. Lakers job, where the Lakers go from here, and Hurley's decision to turn down a 6-year, $70 million contract to go be the coach of the Los Angeles Lakers?
Well, it's reminiscent of about 20 years ago when the Lakers made a run at Mike Krzyzewski. They tried to lure him from Duke. I believe that reported offer was 5 years, $40 million. Of course, you have to deal with inflation.
At the time was a lot of money.
A lot of money. So you
Which
have to
still
deal
is
with
a lot of money.
It is.
For all
you
of
have to
us.
deal with inflation, of course, over the past couple of decades. But Dan Hurley has the opportunity to do something that hasn't been done in a very long time, which is win 3 consecutive national championships. I mean, the last team to do that were those UCLA teams under John Wooden in the 60s and 70s?
Yep.
Yeah, so it's been. He has an opportunity to do that. UConn lost multiple players from their second national championship team to the NBA, but UConn is going to have a good team next season and could very well win the national championship for a 3rd consecutive year. I wonder what this means for the Lakers in the sense that when I was thinking about this yesterday, or when the news broke, I guess that was yesterday, when Dan Hurley was going to return to UConn, I thought about it a little bit like the New England Patriots. Like, there was a time when any high profile, player, free agent, one that wanted to be traded, would do everything to play for the New England Patriots because it was the Patriots. Yep. It was Tom Brady. It was Bill Belichick. It was lots and lots of Super Bowls. But now we know that aura of the Patriots is gone. And I feel like the Lakers are kind of like that too. Like, yes, they have LeBron James. Yes, they have Anthony Davis. Yes, they did win an NBA championship in the bubble, right?
Yeah.
So they've won a title somewhat recently. But LeBron's getting up there in years. and the team around him and Anthony Davis is not very good. It's the Lakers just doesn't the Lakers name doesn't have that same gravitas that it once did, like as recently as Kobe and Shaq, if you want to go back that far. So, I'm wondering if it's a Lakers thing more than a UConn thing. I mean, for Dan Hurley, it's probably more of a UConn thing. Look, UConn probably is going to pay him a lot more money now because he flirted with the Lakers. Yeah. That might have been the entire point of this. That may have been the whole point. Yeah. And if Dan Hurley becomes the highest paid coach, in college basketball, he absolutely deserves it. I mean, his teams have been a wrecking crew for the past 2 seasons. Yeah, but for the Lakers now, they've had some really interesting coaches, to say the least. In the they had Darvin Ham, they had Frank Vogel. It doesn't really feel like the coach has a lot of sway on that team as long as LeBron James is there. I mean, look, as people know, as a lifelong Duke fan, the idea of J.J. Redick coaching the L.A. Lakers, warms my heart. He and LeBron.
I'm sure it does.
Him and LeBron can do their podcast, which is an excellent podcast, by the way. And there were reports before the Hurley reports broke that J.J. Redick was the favorite.
Yep.
I wonder now if the Lakers are going to obviously get their second choice now. But do they, from a PR standpoint, is it like, well, hey, look, we tried. We offered Dan Hurley $70 million, and he turned us down. So, hey, you may not like the fact that J.J. Redick, who has zero professional coaching experience, is coaching our team. But, hey, at least we tried. And I'm not sure how much of a quote-unquote win that would be. But from a PR move, that's something that, the Lakers brass can say, like, we tried, man. We backed up the money truck to Dan Hurley, and he still turned us down. What are we supposed to do?
I saw this tweet yesterday, and they kind of retweeted this, which is how I saw it. And it was quote tweeting Woj's tweet about Hurley turning the job down. And here's what Joe Pompliano had to say, quote, "It's almost like Dan Hurley leaked all of this through a trusted media source who literally wrote a book on his dad," talking about Woj, "to secure himself an even bigger contract at UConn. Woj gets a big scoop, the Lakers get to say we tried, and Hurley gets a huge raise.
Yep.
Win, win, win." And that's kind of how I feel about what just went down there. Like,
right.
I don't know that Hurley was ever actually seriously going to take the LA Lakers job. But it kind of feels like it's going to work out for everybody involved. Because the Lakers get to say, see, we offered him 6 years, $70 million. He said no, and my guess is they're probably going to go hire J.J. Redick now to be their head coach.
I mean, they've had 2 different head coaches since 2019. They've had 3 head coaches since 2016. They had Luke Walton, then Frank Vogel, then Darvin Ham.
I forgot about Luke Walton.
Yeah. Remember that? So, I just feel like the Lakers brand is not as strong as it once was.
And this has been a major story. And my thought the whole time, and I get it. It's the NBA. It's a juicy coaching story. So I think that on some level we all care about like coaching stories and coaching firings and coaching hirings and all that stuff. But like it's been on ESPN for like the last few days. And I'm like, are we really overestimating people, like how many people nationwide actually care about the LA Lakers? Like I realize they're a gigantic brand, and the Lakers, whether you want to think back to Jerry West days or Magic Johnson or Kobe and Shaq, I mean, they've been a force in the NBA and an iconic franchise in American sports for a long time. But it's like all they've been talking about on ESPN the last few days. I'm like, God, do people really care that much that Dan Hurley turned down the Lakers job? Maybe it's just a disconnect from me. I don't know.
Well, I mean, as I say that the Lakers brand doesn't have as much, sway as it once did. I mean, it still is a marquee franchise in North American sports. And it's like why we always talk about, but sports media types always talk about the Dallas Cowboys and things and the New York Yankees because there are a lot of fans of those teams.
It's like when the Knicks were in the conference final or whatever series they were in against, I guess the semifinal against the Pacers. It was just all Knicks all the time. I was like, God, do this many people care about the New York Knicks?
Yeah, I mean, enough people do. And, I mean, look, as long as LeBron James is in the NBA, anything that involves him in some form is going to make news.
There's no doubt.
And, do I think Dan Hurley would have been a good NBA coach? I mean, I assume he's a good coach in general. But it just feels like, especially with the Lakers lately, it just feels like LeBron is basically the shadow coach.
Yep.
And that's why JJ Redick makes sense as a, because look, I mean, JJ Redick is, he's an X's and O's savant. I mean, incredibly smart when it comes to the game of basketball, but he's LeBron's boy, and that means something. And, I feel like the coaches how many, when you look back at maybe with the exception of Eric Spoelstra with your Heat, how many coaches has LeBron had where the coach is basically like a figurehead? It's just here's a guy who we have to hire to fill this role because LeBron can't coach the team. Yeah. I would say the majority of them for sure probably fall into that role.
The funny part is Redick and LeBron are the same age, the exact same age.
Yeah.
So that could be interesting if that's the way things go. Which, look, I assume that there was smoke around that fire with J.J. Redick. So now that Hurley's turned him down, my guess is that's where they're going, right? Redick's going to be the guy.
It seems like the launching point for NBA coaches is the ESPN booth.
Must be.
Because Doc Rivers, remember, was supposed to be in the booth. Then he just left. He left before I think he even called a game, right? Or after a few games, maybe.
After a few games,
and went to Milwaukee. And now J.J. Redick is potentially going to Los Angeles. But yeah, I mean, it just feels like as long as LeBron James is in the NBA, you just need someone to fill that role on the sideline. We just need a warm body to act like a head coach while LeBron runs the team, basically.
615-737-1025, our phone number. Coming up next, some thoughts on Tennessee as they head into Omaha to try to capture their first national title in the history of their baseball program. We'll get into that coming up next. You're listening to Robbie and Rex Road, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Robbie Stanley here, and listen up. If you're running a fast-growing business in Nashville, NetSuite's Business Grows Here event is coming to Nashville on Tuesday, June 25th, which is right around the corner. You don't want to miss it. Why Nashville? Because NetSuite knows Nashville is a hub for entrepreneurs with forward-thinking founders, a top talent pool, and pro-business leadership. Apply to attend the business event of the year, Business Grows Here, taking place at the Conrad Hotel on Tuesday, June 25th. You'll learn how Tennessee is paving the way for new business growth and capital and see how technology fueled by AI is shaping the way we grow and run our business. And you'll be inspired by leaders who have built and led billion-dollar businesses like Jamie Siminoff, founder of Ring Video Doorbell, and Burke Nihill, CEO of the Tennessee Titans. NetSuite by Oracle, Business Grows Here is free to attend if you qualify. Apply right now to find out because seats are going quickly. Block out your calendar on Tuesday, June 25th. Apply right now at netsuite.com/Nashville. Once again, that's netsuite.com/Nashville, and you can check out a link on our website, thegamenashville.com/events. The Savannah Bananas are coming to Nashville, and you can meet the team's players and coaches, plus win tickets to their sold-out games this weekend. Join Chase McCabe and Big Joe this Friday from 9 to 11 at the Duncan in Cool Springs at 500 Cool Springs Boulevard for more details. Welcome back in. Robbie and Rex Road, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Broadcasting live from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Robbie Stanley, Adam Vingan, Nick Keys are here with you on this Tuesday morning. The Vols have punched their ticket to Omaha. They're in Omaha for the third time in the last 4 years. And now the question is this the team that can break through in Omaha? They've been really, really good all season long. Their lineup has been unbelievable. And that last game against Evansville was another reminder of how potent that group can be. I mean, they were just hitting absolute tanks out there against Evansville. Now you're going to Omaha. The ballpark is bigger. It's not the same as Lindsey Nelson Stadium. Having said that, I still feel pretty good about Tennessee's lineup heading into Omaha here. But, you know, it's interesting, Adam. This is a team and a program in terms of baseball that doesn't have a ton of really good history. And we talked about kind of the Tennessee-Vanderbilt comparison and the state of both programs. But this is now 3 appearances in Omaha in 4 years for Tony Vitello and Tennessee. And I heard Jared talking a little bit about this yesterday. Like, it starts out as, man, that first year, what a story. What a job by Tony Vitello to get the group there. And eventually it turns into, all right, it's time for them to win. And I'm not saying that they have to win a national championship or it's a bust. You know, we can go back and listen to Vitello's 6.5-minute rant the other day about what success is and how you define it and all that stuff. But I do feel like this fan base is starving for a win, starving for a national title. And this is a team that, when you look at what they've done all year, from the way they hit the ball, their pitching, while I still think has question marks, it's been a great pitching team all year by the numbers. Like, this feels like Tennessee has as good of a chance, maybe better of a chance than anybody heading into this tournament. And if they don't pull it off, I think there's going to be a lot of disappointment from Tennessee fans.
It's been, what, like 25 years since a
since 99.
Since a number one overall seed has won the College World Series. So.
Which is absolutely, when you think about that, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah,
There's
absolutely.
not been one exception to that in a quarter century.
It was Miami in 1999. You're right. Look, when you've had the sustained success that the Tennessee baseball program has had over the past few years, you need something to show for it. You know, we have passed the happy to be here portion of the Tennessee baseball program.
Yeah.
So, you know, do they need to win the national championship to validate it all? I mean, my gut says yes, but I mean, at least you know, getting to the championship game.
I mean,
you know, that's the next step.
Yeah, I mean, they've not done that yet. So, like, if they got to the championship game and they lost, would it be disappointing? For sure. But, I mean, it would be hard to walk away from that and say, well, it was a failure. Like, this team didn't live up to expectations. Like, when you lose in the championship series, it just kind of is what it is. And I think everybody would recognize it's a pretty significant step for this team. But, I mean, look, Vitello, he's done a great job. He's a really good coach. And, you know, with the way that they're recruiting, the program that they've built, it feels inevitable that if they stick with it, they're going to win one at some point. I mean, we talked about that. They had one of the greatest college baseball teams of all time a couple years ago and didn't even make it to Omaha, which is maybe the craziest part about all this is that was the most loaded team they've had, and that's the one that didn't get to Omaha out of this stretch. This team, I still think, is probably not as loaded as that one when you factor in the whole picture. But I'll tell you what, this lineup is really, really good. And that, if you're a Tennessee fan, I think is what gives you some confidence. Like, they can hit their way out of some trouble, and they've done it all year. Not that they've been in a ton of trouble because, like I said, their pitching has been pretty good. But this team can hit their way out of trouble. And when they're mashing the ball, like they hit a few of their homers the other night. I don't care if they're playing at Lindsey Nelson, if they're playing in Omaha. There are a couple of those balls that they hit that would have left Grand Canyon, that they hit them so hard. So I feel pretty good about where they're at right now. It feels like the table is set for them to win, and that the table is set for them to win a national title. And if they go out here and it's a short stay in Omaha again, that is going to – first off, the Vandy, Tennessee fan chirping will be fantastic if that happens. But I feel like the fan base will just be like – it starts to get into – and it's not the same scenario, but like Rick Barnes basketball territory. And Rick Barnes – that situation is different because Barnes had some of the tournament history coming with him before he ever got to Tennessee with Texas. And Vitello is not – he's not been around long enough to have some of that. But it's really just like the state of the whole athletic program right now of like football's pretty good. Basketball is good. Baseball is good. But you don't have a national title to show for it in anything yet. And it feels like Tennessee fans are screaming and starving of somebody break through. And it feels like this baseball team's got the best shot.
I did notice something very interesting yesterday. So Tennessee has drawn Florida State to start the College World Series. Seminoles coach Link Jarrett was the coach of the Notre Dame Fighting Irish team that defeated Tennessee in 2022.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting. A little connective tissue there. Not sure how much that means in the grand scheme of things, but I feel like if Tennessee can move on from Florida State, you can at least get one back over on the coach that took away your best chance of winning a championship, perhaps.
Drew on the text line saying, so is Tennessee just a baseball school like Vandy now? Well, I mean, Tennessee is going to have a preseason top 15 football program.
Top 5 basketball program, probably.
If they're not top 5, they're going to be top 10, top 15 in basketball in preseason.
I would say definitely top 10.
Okay. So top 10 basketball program, and they have the number 1 baseball team in the country right now. So you tell me.
How's their bowling program? They don't have one, right?
I don't think so.
So
you tell me. I mean, look, again, we've talked about this before. Like, I think Rexroad has called this a golden age of Tennessee athletics. And my argument the whole time has been, well, that's fine. Like, you have to win championships in order for me to classify it that way. But his point is, like, they're a good football program right now. They're a really darn good basketball program right now, and they're an elite baseball program. Like, they're really good. But at some point, like, you got to find a way with the money that you're spending, the investment in your programs, to break through and win. And look, I think there's pressure on this Tennessee team, but Vitello went in his 7-minute rant the other day, talked about, right now we're not supposed to win. We're the number 1 overall seed. And one of those haven't won in 25 years. So there's no pressure on us. We're not supposed to win. So some mind bending going on there. But I'm really interested to see if this is the year they break through. And if so, what does that mean for them moving forward here? I mean, they've got the makings with the number 1 recruiting class coming in next year too to be a giant in college baseball moving forward here. It's really fascinating to see how quickly he's turned this around.
No, it's very impressive. Like, moving here, at the height of Vanderbilt's dynasty, right? Like, I thought, like, Vanderbilt's going to own this for a while, but it's really the tide has shifted over the past few years.
So we'll see as things get rolling here this weekend in Omaha what Tennessee can do. See if they can finish the job and go win a national title, becoming the first number 1 overall seed to do so since 1999, which, again, is pretty incredible to think about that it's been that long. Adam, great stuff. You're going to be with us the rest of the week here on the program.
I will, and my homework for Nick, because I'm assigning you homework, is to listen to Alanis Morissette so you don't look like a idiot coming back in here tomorrow.
Nick, your thoughts?
Well,
we're out of time.
Don't call me an idiot.
I sure did.
I mean, I know some other ones, too. I know some older tracks. I know some older groups.
What's your favorite band, Nick?
That's good.
My favorite band? I'd say Jude and the Lion.
We'll get to it tomorrow.
We'll get to that tomorrow.
That does it for us today. Chase and Big Joe coming up next. You're listening to 102.5, 106.3 The Game.